the bottom of the spectrum, I just want to say, are the narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths who have what I call empathy deficient disorder. It's a disorder. And I'd like people to wrap their minds around this, that they don't have empathy as we know it. They're not wired to have empathy. And so it's very important to protect yourself from these kinds of people, or at least know who you're dealing with when you approach them. That's why I wrote a whole chapter on that topic, so everyone could diagnose narcissists and make a choice about whether to go forward with that or how to handle them.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. In our stressful world, many feel overwhelmed and exhausted. One way to overcome this is to tap into the transformative and healing practice of empathy. Empathy is a form of emotional intelligence that enables us to offer care and compassion with intention. Today, my guest, Dr. Judith Orloff, will share the magic of empathy to help us find greater self-love and embody our most compassionate selves in our relationships with others. Dr. Judith Orloff is a board-certified psychiatrist, a member of the UCLA Psychiatric Clinical Faculty, and a New York Times bestselling author. She's a leading voice in medicine, psychiatry, empathy, and intuitive development. In her private practice, she specializes in treating highly sensitive people. Her work has been featured on CNN, NPR, Talks at Google, TEDx, and the American Psychiatric Association. She also has appeared in USA Today, the Oprah Magazine, and Scientific American. Drawing on neuroscience, psychology, and energy medicine insights, Dr. Judith will introduce us to empathy as a daily healing practice. We'll discuss common misconceptions about empathy, how to master it as a skill set, and how to demonstrate compassion towards ourselves and others, even if we don't particularly like a person. Hello, Dr. Orloff. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be on your show.
Well, I'm excited to have you on our show. I've actually been following your work for a very long time now because I am what they call an empath. And I know that you've dedicated a lot of your work to the well-being of empaths and really helping them find their way. And I have to say your books and your courses have really helped me navigate life as someone who is more sensitive to their environment and other people than others are. So I just want to start by thanking you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's one of my life purposes, and I feel so honored to help empaths awaken all over the globe, which is such a beautiful sight because we need you now more than ever.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the world is just getting noisier and more crazy, so we definitely need that. We need, that guidance.
Yeah, we need each other, and we need to develop empathy, and the empaths need to learn how to set boundaries and protect themselves so that they could feel empowered. And so, don't be dissuaded by the world at the moment. Just focus on yourself and developing your own empathy and your own strength.
Right. And that is something you focus a lot on in your new book, which you've titled The Genius of Empathy. And I find it interesting that you use the term genius. But before we get into that, Dr. Orloff, what does it really mean to be empathetic and to live an empathic life? What does that look like?
Well, I consider empathy to be on a spectrum. And in the middle of the spectrum is normal empathy, regular empathy that people have, or I care about you, I'm so sorry that happened to you, that kind of interchange, which is just fine. But higher up on the spectrum, you get the empaths who not only feel that, but they can become emotional sponges to absorb the energy of the world, whether it's positive, it could be happiness, it could be health, or it could be unhappiness or disease. And so empaths tend to have no filters, not the same filters that other people have. So they absorb everything. And this can have a negative effect on empaths unless they learn how to handle it. And that's why I wrote the book, was to give empaths tools on how to handle a lot coming at you without taking it on in your body. That's like empath 101.
Mhm.
And so the bottom of the spectrum, I just want to say, are the narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths who have what I call empathy deficient disorder. It's a disorder. And I'd like people to wrap their minds around this, that they don't have empathy as we know it. They're not wired to have empathy. And so it's very important to protect yourself from these kinds of people, or at least know who you're dealing with when you approach them. That's why I wrote a whole chapter on that topic, so everyone could diagnose narcissists and make a choice about whether to go forward with that or how to handle them.
Okay, so you said that it exists on a spectrum. So
Yeah.
what if they display some traits that could be questionable, like narcissistic-like traits? Do we still be wary of them and build those boundaries, or is there a way to interact with them that would be considered safe, but at the same time we allow them into our space?
Right. Well, that's your choice. And it's if someone is a malignant narcissist, meaning a full-fledged narcissist, I wouldn't do that, because there is very, very little hope that they're going to ever love you, in the sense of unconditional love, because what narcissists are into is power, not love. And it's a whole different dynamic. If you've ever experienced it, anyone who's experienced it knows that dynamic of power, and it's very seductive. So it will reel you in, and they know how to wield their power, but it's not based on unconditional love. But if somebody just has a few narcissistic traits, like self-absorption, or maybe a harder time finding empathy, but they're not against it, they want to try and find it, you can work with them in therapy. You can't do it necessarily just communicating in your relationship. I don't think that's sufficient. But if you have a skilled therapist to help that person open up to love and what that is and how to communicate better, I think it's possible, to have a good relationship. It's still fraught with more problems than you might want, but it's possible.
Okay, so how are we able to stay in the space of empathy when we're dealing with such people, or when we're dealing with people who trigger us? Like, how do we stay in this? Because it's easy to do it with people that we like and that we care about. But if we're dealing with someone who's difficult, how can we have that sense of compassion for them and really try to kind of understand them and put ourselves in their shoes, so to speak?
Well, that's one of the skills in the book, is how do you have empathy for difficult people?
Exactly.
And it's an essential life skill. I mean, there's so many difficult people. If you don't know how to do this, you're going to be at a loss. All right. But I think many people are conditioned to think, if someone's difficult, why should I have empathy with them? What role would that play? And I'm saying it plays an essential role. If you're at work, for instance, there's a section in the book on finding empathy with difficult people at work. Let's say you're at work and you're dealing with a drama queen or a chronic talker or a passive aggressive person, or somebody who takes up your time and you don't want to give that much time to them. There's a whole variety of difficult people, quote, difficult people. And keep in mind, it's important when you're going through this section of the book to have some humility, because we all can be difficult. I guarantee you can be difficult. I can be difficult. It's not just them. You never want to do us versus them. But what you do want to do is recognize who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with, let's say, a chronic talker, You don't want to keep asking them how they're doing. Really simple tips. You don't want to say, oh, how are you doing today? Don't want to do that. You want to just say, hi, nice to see you. And if they start up, oh my God, I went to the store and it was robbed and I barely made it to work. And, this huge story. Now you could say, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'll keep you in my thoughts today. As opposed to what many empaths do is ask for every little detail of the experience. Because empaths love to help, they love to heal, but they get exhausted. And if you're an empath, you need to really be sensitive to your exhaustion quotient. And when your body energies start to go down, and you have to train yourself to recognize that before it's too late. Because when the body energies start to go down, and it's over a period of weeks or months, it can get you into an energy crash. And you don't want to get in that state. It takes a while to come back from that.
What are the symptoms of that? How do we know we've reached that threshold?
Total exhaustion, brain fog. You don't really want to do anything for anybody. You might have exacerbation of chronic pain, or you just don't have any tolerance for people, or you're nasty and you don't want to be. You don't have your center, and all you do is want to rest. You just want to rest. You want to stay in bed. You want to watch TV. You want to do mindless things in order to build yourself up again so there's no demands coming at you. But if the thing is with empaths is that I'm an empath as well. I'm a psychiatrist and an empath. You wear an invisible sign that says, I can help you. So wherever you go as an empath, you can't run, you can't hide. They're going to come up to you and start sharing. It just happens. Have you experienced that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have.
Yeah. Well, it happens.
And I can identify with the people pleasing as well. Like I feel kind of bad to interrupt them. I just let them go on and on. That used to happen in the past, but now I've learned to build those boundaries or find a way to tactfully get away from the conversation.
Yeah, that's right. But you've got to do it in an empathic, loving way and look at it as if it's your right to do it. You don't have to sit there as an empath and listen to all of that. You really don't. And so I've presented in this book, The Genius of Empathy, is about how to practically handle situations in life from an empathic standpoint and how to show empathy even in difficult situations. You don't like somebody irritates you. Why should you show empathy with them? Because you want to try and have the best possible relationship with people that you don't like. And something like, I hear what you're saying, but doesn't mean you have to listen too long. But I hear what you're saying. Thank you for sharing. I'll keep you in my thoughts. That's 15 seconds of your time to say that. And that will transform the relationship because you're letting this person know that they are heard. And people are not heard. They're not listened to. They're not shown empathy. And so it's important, once they hear that, it's something new for them. And it's truly what they want deep down inside themselves.
Is it possible that you kind of put yourself on the line here, that you could be seen as a pushover or people can take advantage of you? Because I know a lot of people are concerned about that, especially in a world where there is that power game. Is it safe to show empathy, and is there a chance that people can take advantage of us?
That's a good point. I make it a point in The Genius of Empathy is that empathy doesn't mean being a doormat. Does not mean that. It means you can be tough as nails, but it's just that you know what you're doing. You want to be as caring a person as possible. You don't want to enable anyone. You're not showing empathy for horrible behavior, like somebody hurt you, somebody murders somebody, if somebody, treats others in a very disrespectful way, that's not what you have empathy with, by the way. I just want to clarify. If somebody really hurt you, you don't have empathy for the act, but you do have empathy for the suffering that caused them to do the act. because happy people don't do these things. They don't do these horrible things to you, whatever they did. Happy people or together people don't. So they're coming from a point of the crippling of the heart, such as the narcissist. And you want to have empathy for that because that cuts off your obsession about them. When you have empathy for them, you're not always thinking about them for 20 years in the future. They get set adrift into the matrix, so you don't have to think about them so much. It's a gift you give to yourself.
Got
And
it.
you just have to try it, because otherwise you'll be thinking about them forever, probably.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that. And it seems like people who have this nature, they're not even able to take in that love and that understanding. Even if a person expresses it to them, they just don't have that capacity, right?
That's right. Empaths need to learn that. And I'll say it as many times as is possible, because I have a private practice and I see patients and I give workshops, and everywhere I go, I tell people this, what you just said, and do not get involved with a narcissist. They will not be able to return your love. They just won't. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry that that's true, because they're so seductive, and you might like them so much in the beginning, but that's neither here nor there, really. It's how they treat you over a period of time that's essential. And a key point in this book is having empathy with yourself. Self-empathy. And part of self-empathy is saying, I'm not going to get involved with these kind of people, even though they're the most fabulous person in the world, but they're love bombing me, or they're, hooking me in with the intermittent reinforcement techniques, which is what they use. Is the same as, going to Vegas at the slot machines, where they give you a lot of reinforcement, then they withdraw it. And then you're chasing after them. Where are they? I thought they cared about me so much. Why are they not returning my calls? So self-empathy means learning when to say no to seductive people when you suspect they're narcissists. That's a big step to taking care of yourself. So you want to be around people who love you and appreciate you and see all of your beautiful points and are able to go with you, to the dark side if you go there. If you have darker, fear, anxiety, things come up in life.
Right. And attachment styles, right? Because if you have that anxious attachment style, if you had a dysfunctional relationship with a family member or caretaker, that can influence you to be drawn to such partners, toxic partners.
Yeah. You want your partner to be able to handle it. You want your partner to be able to have empathy. And empaths are often very emotional. I go through in the book the types of empaths. And
yeah, you mentioned four of them, right?
Type.
Yeah.
Yeah, emotional empath, intuitive empath, spiritual empath, animal empath. Also, there's cognitive empathy, where people just express empathy with their minds. And you have to identify with which type of empath you are, or which type of empathy do you have, so you know how to mobilize it when necessary.
Could you briefly explain each of those four types for us, Dr. Orloff?
Yes. Cognitive empathy is when somebody says to you, oh, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I appreciate, the difficulties. I'm with you. That's from the mind. That isn't necessarily from the heart. Then there's emotional empathy, which is what I am. I'm an emotional empath, and I don't know what you are, but it's somebody who feels everything from the heart. You just want to help everybody. It's not realistic. I'm telling you, it's not. And it's not your job either. That's part of being an empowered empath, is to realize it's not your job to fix everybody. But an emotional empath, I feel what's going on, when you're hurting, and I might even become a mesh with you and feel it so much, it feels like it's my own. And that's not a healthy thing. So it's important for emotional empaths to use all the love they have in their hearts and express empathy, but don't take on the angst of others. Now that's, the boundary setting skill that comes in. And then there's
I just have to say that must be hard for you as a therapist because, people are expressing their emotions, they're venting when they speak with you. How do you protect yourself at those times?
That's an interesting question. As I've been in practice for, 30 years, something like that. And when I'm not in my personal self, I don't absorb energy from other people. And when I work with my patients, I'm in my, I set aside everything in my life and all my problems or all my happinesses, and I'm just 100% there with you. And when I'm able to find that neutral part of myself that's able to give in that way, I don't absorb in the same way. It's really unusual because I know when I was going through medical school and I was on call a lot in the emergency room, I was shocked that when I was in that very violent and demanding environment, I wasn't absorbing the energy of all these people. And it's because I was in a place of selfless service. I wasn't thinking of myself. So I think there's a little exception here, at least for how my biochemistry is made. When I get into selfless service, it's a bit of a different story because all I'm doing is just, I need to help you. If you're dying, then I need to resuscitate you. I'm not thinking about getting drained. I'm thinking about saving you. And 100%. And afterwards, when I go home, then the crash would happen. Okay. But it's a little different than being an emotional empath where it's happening in the moment. You feel your energy going down, down, down. And you have to train yourself to notice what people help your energy go up and what people cause your energy to go down. That's part of the training of being an empath. And I go through all this in the Genius of Empathy, step by step. And it's a process. And you have to get used to it and repeat it over and over again and realize in your mind that you don't have to be compassionate all the time, that you don't have to be on call for all your friends all the time to help them. You just don't. That's not a healthy way to be. You have to learn how to say, no, I really need to stay home tonight because I'm tired. And I need to take care of myself. And you say it in an empathic way. You don't say it in a nasty way. And I just want to go on. The other two forms of empathy are intuitive empathy, where you might perceive the world from intuition. You get flashes about people or knowings about people, or you feel their energy. You get feelings in your body about people. So it's more of an intuitive way of viewing the world. Which is very interesting and very helpful. And then there's spiritual empathy, where there are certain people who see others, the best in others all the time. They see the best. They don't see the whole person. And so part of being spiritual empath is learning how to see people in a balanced way, their dark side and their light side, as we all have it. We have dark, we have light.
Okay. Empathy seems to be going down these days because we are feeling increasingly more disconnected from our feelings because of the social media and because of just the nature of the world right now. So, Dr. Orloff, what can we do to kind of bring back empathy and really contribute in a way that would help people connect with that part of themselves where they're feeling more deeply and where they're able to really put themselves in other people's shoes, especially in a world where there's so much polarization, where people are disagreeing so much? How do we get to that place?
You have to want to. This is a topic that you have to be attracted to it. If this doesn't interest you and you don't see the point, just don't do it. Go do something that works for yourself. That does work. If your relationships are happy and you're happy with the way you're interrelating, go somewhere else. But if you want to have more loving relationships with people, if you want to have a more loving relationship to yourself instead of beating yourself up, then empathy is the magic key to get in that door. And so if you're at the least bit curious about how you can get there, I would suggest that you try a little bit of the techniques that I present here and see if it gives you what you want. As what people want is to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. That's the basis of, all of us. No matter how tough guy somebody is, that's what they want.
Yeah.
Except for the narcissists who have no empathy. So that's a different story. They want power. But most people, just want to be seen and heard and valued. So if you could remember only that from this interview, you could begin to talk to people from that standpoint. And you'll see the change that happens in your relationships. If your spouse will be thrilled, your children will be thrilled, your friends will be so happy to have you, treat them in a more empathic way, yet boundary setting, saying I can only listen for 5 minutes unless you want to get into solutions, and learn how to wield your tone of voice. The tone of voice is about energy, and you want your tone of voice to convey the best possible energy to somebody as it can give off empathy as you're saying no. And so you're giving them, a gift of, I wish I could do this, but I really can't. It's just not possible. I'm just too exhausted. I can't do this now. Sorry. But you say it in the nicest of ways and not phony. It's not phony. It's truly, I wish I could, but I can't. So you learn how to wield the eye contact. There's a chapter on how to empathically listen to somebody, and you listen through the energy of your eyes, through the sound of your voice, through your body posture. You never look at your phone when somebody's sharing. You want to turn your phone off because that's a sign of disrespect if you pick up the phone in the middle of these kinds of connections. And so you learn these tricks and you practice it and you see how the relationships in your life get better. And the relationship with yourself too. So I really emphasize that. You have to start here. You have to stop beating yourself up so much. And human beings, human nature, that's what they do. As a psychiatrist, I've met with so many people over the years, and nearly everybody beats themselves up. And part of healing is to learn how to do that less and to have kinder messages to yourself. Now, you're doing a great job. It was a hard day. Just take care of yourself tonight, as opposed to you're a stupid idiot. How could you fall for that? Which isn't a nice thing to say. So, you want to change the verbiage of how you talk to yourself in your own head. And only you know that. You know that. That's your private chamber up here. But if I can suggest that you go to self-empathy, in a way, it should be the first chapter, but it isn't, because I had to do some introductory empathy explanations. But
Right.
I think it's one of the most important chapters of the book. If you could learn how to show self-empathy, your energy is going to go up and your heart's going to open. And as you age, you're going to become this beautiful, light-filled person who's not carrying around all these burdens because you will have worked with your heart. Empathy opens the heart. The heart is the healing energy. And the more your heart can open, the more healing rushes through your body and helps your immunity and your health and your well-being, as well as others. So it can only improve everything as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's the missing component to save the world. I really do. I don't think that's oversaying it.
Right.
I really don't. I think we're in a fix. Now we're in a predicament. Empathy can help. And people have to learn the benefits of that and why they want to do that, as opposed to holding on to their hatred and polarization and not loving each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big task, but I think it's doable. The more we have these conversations, the more something resonates in somebody else. They say, "Hey, okay, I'll pick up the book. I'll read these techniques. I'll apply them, to my life, even though there's a part of me, my mind is saying, why should I do this? This person stole $1 million from me.
And I have to
or
say,
suffering.
it's also harder in certain cultures. Like if you're in a collectivistic culture where everyone's in your business, it can be harder to set those boundaries because they might see that as, they might get offended by them. And I've kind of experienced what it's like being an empath in a collectivistic culture and an individualistic culture, and it's a different experience.
Yes, that's true, but it's your demeanor that counts. And of course, certain communities are very rigid and they expect you to act in certain ways. And so it adds an additional burden onto you,
Right.
because if you don't act in a certain way, you might get shunned, or you might get put down or manipulated. It's all true. And so with those communities, that's a little bit harder than the regular circumstance, but I hear what you're saying. But you have to make sure the other person feels loved when you talk to them. And don't start with your mother or your father, or even your brothers. Don't start with them. Start with the cleaners, who's done something to irritate you. Just start with the little examples so that you could begin to have some successes. The people with the strong beliefs, like you're talking about, and you're raised in a certain belief system like that, they're the hardest to change. They really are. It's not impossible, but you want to make them feel seen, feel heard, and feel valued. You start with that. And then there's a technique I talk about in the book called the sandwich technique that you can use when you communicate, which is you start with something. I'm so glad you're my brother. I really appreciate you. You're amazing. And I really need your help with this one topic. Then you put in the topic, and then you say, thank you for being such a great brother. And it
works like a charm. Yeah. Right.
But you do. I like to speak in the language of the other person when I'm showing empathy. I don't need to speak in my own language, not necessary. If my goal, you have to define, what is your goal with empathy? Do you want to get through to the brother, or do you want to be right? And this is a question everyone needs to ask themselves if you want to bring empathy into the situation. You want to see what your goal is.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep having the same old arguments you've had since you've been little? No, because they're very old, and then you want to have them 20 years from now. But I'm telling you, people do. And so to free yourself from that trap, you can try the empathy secret. And look at their reactions. They won't know what hit them a lot of times. And sometimes if you just say, I really admire you, just at another time, it makes them feel good, because people who need to be pumped up a lot usually don't feel very good about themselves. So you need to outsmart them, and empathy is a way to do it. They won't see it coming. But if they start blaming you, and this is not just your situation, it's everybody's situation to some degree. If they make you feel guilty, what kind of sister are you? Or whatever the family member is, you can say, I'm a really good sister. I'm so devoted to you. I love you. You're amazing. And I need to stay home tonight. I'm sorry. I know you depended on me to go to this event with you, but I can't. I'm just too tired. I just can't even move. And I love you. Thank you for understanding that. But you don't have to get whiny. You don't have to get pleading. You don't have to any of that. It's about staying in your center. Empathy is about communicating in a different way, and it's from your center. It's not from some whiny place where you're hoping they're not going to come down on you.
Yeah, you got to be mature. Got to be mature and set that ego aside.
Yeah, exactly. You can't make strides in empathy if you're stuck in your ego all the time. This isn't about that. This is about experimenting. This is about going down the road less traveled. It's about seeing how much you believe in love and empathy, even with hard cases of people. There are a lot of hard cases of people and a lot of very irritating people. So get ready for it. And there's a lot of very loving people who you really can connect with empathy, and they are like you, so they, want to connect to you in the same way. And it's a joy when you have those. I'm just
Oh, yeah.
presenting the more difficult situations in this interview to give
Yeah.
your listeners some ideas of
Yeah.
specifics that we can use empathy.
Yeah. And if you find those wonderful people, hold on to them. They're so precious. They're hard to find.
Oh, you hold on to them. Yes,
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
And you value them. And they're not going to be perfect either. Empaths
Of
are not
course.
perfect people,
Of course.
but they will understand you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing, to be understood.
Yeah.
No, it's a beautiful feeling when somebody understands me. And, one thing that empaths have to deal with is guilt. When they set a boundary, it's very important that they deal with where the guilt came from and do some backtracking in your family history and find out who's making you feel guilty when you're setting limits. And then begin to heal that, maybe work with the coach or a therapist to help heal that old pattern of feeling guilty when you assert yourself. Now, if you're going to feel guilty your whole life about asserting yourself, you're not going to have a very happy life. It's okay. It's not too much. Sometimes people think, oh, this is too much, but it isn't. You're up for this job, as is everyone who's listening. Don't think, oh, it's too much. You just do a little bit at a time and it will shock them. They're not looking for this. They're looking for the old patterns, the way it's always been, and they want to keep you in that little box. Why? I don't know, status quo. But you, and all the empaths out there who I've spoken to are the ones that are changing those generational patterns. You're dealing with things differently. You're not yelling back at them when they yell or they accuse you of us versus them, or you're not into wound mate relationships, which I write about, where the relationship is just about wounding each other.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a very destructive way to go.
Yep.
Very destructive, where you're hooked in by your psychological patterns of wounding. So you can't reach empathy in that state. So you don't want to do that. But you need to be the one to change things. And if you think, oh, I'm not up for it, I don't want to do it, well, that's one way of looking at it. But, if you're chosen to do it, just take a breath and accept your mission.
Well, Judith, thank you so much for those kind and loving words. I'm sure our listeners really, really received that. I so appreciate you being here and offering us your profound insights and your wisdom. It's been wonderful.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to say that I have a website, drjudithorloff.com.
Yes.
And you can get the Genius of Empathy there, or the Empath Survival Guide, which are both handbooks for being an empath.
Yes.
If you're, wanting to have that kind of guidance. And I'm giving various talks, around, online and in person with my book tour. So I invite you all to join this conversation in empathy. And I have an empath newsletter on my website that's free once a month if you want tips and tricks of how to be an empath that's empowered.
Great. Thanks for mentioning that, Dr. Orloff. I just want to mention the entire title of your new book, The Genius of Empathy, Practical Skills to Heal Your Sensitive Self, Your Relationships, and the World. And as Dr. Orloff said, she has a bunch of other great books. She's got programs, workshops, and you can find all that information at her website, drjudithorloff.com. As usual, the link will be in the description.